how the role changed. Do you think that now it's still possible to do something like that? I mean, like starting a new venture without money, and honestly, I did the same. I start without money, starting a new venture, new format, new ideas.
I think it's not a question of can you, I think it's a question of necessity. I think you have to, because I think our business has got to the stage where it's become too much of a business. It's become too difficult to join that business, where the big acts, what I call the dinosaur acts, still control that business. There's not enough movement for new acts to rise up because the big acts are taking so much money out of it. We have big conglomerate companies like Live Nation and AEG and other companies, Diag in Germany and so on and so forth.
What do you think about them?
I'll come on to that in a second. And it's all about money. And we have a structure where we have agents who, in the main, are there to get as much money as possible for their artists, because that's what the artists want. And not many of them think enough about building careers. They just want the money. And we have an age of media that is instant. And so as much as music is more in demand than ever before and more listened to than ever before, it's actually more difficult today to get your head around it. So in order to move on, we have to now develop new talent. We have to develop new ways of doing it. And we have to develop new talent that is both on the stage performing and behind the stage organising. And we have to allow new talent to come through in a different way and do it their way that suits today's technology, what young people want and how to do it. We have to do that. And if we can't do it, then this new generation have to push their way through and do it themselves. So in the same way, when I first started, there were three kind of promoters in England who were classic, traditional vaudeville promoters who kind of lucked into the music as it changed and were very rigid in what they did. And I just decided that I wanted to do something different, and the music community wanted something done differently. Today we have to have new people coming through who have to starve in the same way as we did at the beginning and come up with their ideas of how to push the music through, because there's never shortage of music, there's never shortage of talent. There's probably a shortage of talent in terms of organisational talent, people behind the business. And it's a struggle, but if you're new and if you want to do it, whatever happens and you really believe in it, don't give up. You just got to keep pushing through, and you're not going to be a Live Nation promoter in your territory on day one, because you have to learn how to do that. And those guys have spent a huge amount of time and a lot of money learning their task. They're very good at what they do, but they do it their way. And they're in a completely different business model from what young people need to do today in order to start. They've got to start off and just push their way through and find and work with artists who hopefully will stick with them, because that's the key to it all. It's no good spending your time, if you're going to be a promoter, working with an act, building it up from the floor, and the minute it starts to sell 1,000 tickets or 1,500 tickets, it gets taken away from you. That's hopeless. So you've got to build your relationship. And I think that's really important too.
Good. I mean, I'm happy that you, as we both think that there is still space, there is still a role for entrepreneur, for promoter, for producer, for people that believe in an asset, in something, in the music from a certain country, in an idea of music connected with a location, or a music connected with art, or whatever it is. And I personally believe that the more the corporation will grow and the more there is space for smart people, clever people, people that obviously have hope, will, and courage, because without that there is no chance. Before that we start talking about some of your huge experience in fundraising, Live Aid, the Campuchia, the Wall, and the Freddie Mercury tribute, the funny story that you remember now about an artist?
Keith Moon from The Who. We had a show at Hammersmith Apollo with The Who. We did a week with them there, and Keith had just been made a sheriff from a city in Florida, and they gave him the complete uniform, including the handcuffs. And I arrived down for rehearsal with The Who, and I went on stage and said hello to all the band and whatever. And I just want to bring a point up before I continue with this story. I made a decision right from the get-go, once I realised that I was actually in a business, because I didn't know I was in a business for probably 5 or 6 years after I started. I just had no idea. I always assumed if things went wrong, I could always go back and do pharmacy, so it never bothered me. But as it developed, it became a business. But what I decided very, very early on was I would only work with bands whose music I liked, and I would only work with artists who I could personally get on with. Otherwise, I just couldn't have the fire and the passion to promote them. And over the years, I've passed on many, many acts who have made a lot of money because I just didn't get the music, didn't like it, and didn't particularly like them as people. And I think that's also quite important in your relationship with artists. You have to build a relationship with the act as well as with the management and the agent. There are too many promoters today, and I could give you some really horrific examples of promoters who've worked with artists for years and years and years, and the acts don't know them from a bar of soap. And it's really important to stamp your impression upon the artist as well as have the relationship with the management and the agency, because the artists remember, and when they come to that town, it's you they want to see, not somebody else. So that's very important. Anyway, back to The Who. So we're on stage, and I am leaning against a Marshall amp, talking to Keith Moon and whatever, and the next thing I know is there's 5 of the crew have surrounded me around this amp, and as I'm leaning on the amp, suddenly there's a click, and I discovered that I am now handcuffed to the amp. They all go off to have tea, they come back for a break, and I'm still standing there going, okay, chat's very funny, get me out of here. Unbeknownst to me, they planned all this. They had something called a Kirby's Flying Ballet, which was left over from a show, a musical was there before. And Kirby's Flying Ballet is a mechanism where you fly people in the air, like Peter Pan and that kind of thing. And they'd obviously had some kind of pantomime or something that was going on before where somebody was being flown up in the air. The crew had got hold of this, rigged it up. They all came round again, they were all laughing and whatever, as I'm standing round this amp handcuffed. And as I persuaded them to, or rather Keith, to give me the key or unlock the handcuffs, as they were doing that, the next thing I know was this Kirby's Flying Ballet is now gripped round my waist. I didn't realise it because I was so pleased to get these bloody handcuffs off. The next thing I know, as the handcuffs came off, this thing is whipped round my waist and tied in, and I am now flying in the air. So I am now 2 feet below the curtain in the air. It is now 6:15 and the doors are opening at 6:30. And the stage manager cleared the house to open the doors, and I'm standing, well, flying there like a complete idiot for an hour, and they let the house in.